Survey of the Book of Joshua, named after central figure Joshua, whose name means the Lord saves. Jesus means the Lord saves. That's a Greek variation of the Hebrew name Joshua. My name is Robert Corah, native mi.org. Dr. Rich Costanza provided the notes, and we're happy to walk with you through the survey of the Old Testament. Now, Joshua's background: he was the son of Nun of the tribe of Ephraim. He was born a slave in Egypt. Moses changed his name from Hoshua to Joshua. He was a military commander. He was one of the 12 spies sent. He became Moses' assistant and successor. Now, the author is Joshua. He describes, to begin with, one, the conquest, as Israel went into the Canaan as promised by God. Two, the promise, which was given to Abraham originally, that they would be given the land of Canaan as an inheritance for his descendants. And three, leadership. Joshua succeeded Moses as the leader of Israel. Fourth, faith. The Israelites crossed the Jordan River in faith, following God's guidance. Joshua demonstrates God's faithfulness in fulfilling his promises and emphasizes the importance of obedience and faith for Israel to inherit the promised land. And Joshua divided the land in order to conquer it. Although there's not an author's name written, the most likely one is Joshua himself. Now, in regard to the date of writing, it was written approximately 1405 to 1385 BC. The setting of the book of Joshua. There are three basic stages in the book of Joshua. 1. Entering the promised land of Canaan, chapters 1 to 5. 1 month around March and April 1405 BC. Secondly, conquering the promised land of Canaan, found in chapter 6 to 13. 7 years around 1405 to 1398 BC. And then settling in the promised land of Canaan and dividing the land among the 12 tribes from chapter 13 to chapter 24. 8 years around 1398 to 1390 BC. Significant people in the book of Joshua. First is Joshua, Moses' successor, who would lead Israel into the promised land. Second, Rahab, a woman who hid 2 Israelite spies who came to investigate her hometown of Jericho. 3, Achan, a man who sinned following the conquering of Jericho and thus brought defeat upon the Israelites at their next military encounter. 4, Caleb, one of the men who had explored the land of Canaan with Joshua in the book of Numbers. 5, Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the current high priest. 6, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar and grandson of Aaron, who became high priest upon his father's death. And the theme and purpose of the book of Joshua. The theme of the book of Joshua is the Israelites' possession of the promised land and enjoyment of God's blessings through obedient faith. Its purpose is to document the conquest of Canaan by the Israelites under Joshua's leadership. The book of Joshua begins where the book of Deuteronomy leaves off. The Israelites are camped east of the Jordan River. The Lord used Joshua to lead the Israelites to conquer Canaan. 3 military campaigns involved fighting more than 30 enemy armies. The Israelites begin by conquering the central part of Canaan, driving a wedge between the northern and southern parts of the land, and preventing a united counterattack against the Israelites. Significant events in the book of Joshua. Entering and conquering Canaan, Joshua chapter 1 through chapter 13, verse 7. Now into Joshua chapter 1. God gives the inaugural address to Joshua, including the assurance of the Israelites' possession of Canaan, the assurance of God's presence, and giving him a blueprint for success. In response to God's message, Joshua tells the Israelites to get ready to enter Canaan. In Joshua chapter 2, two spies are sent to view Jericho. Rahab hides the spies from the king of Jericho. The spies promise that Rahab's household will be spared when the Israelites enter the land of Canaan. The spies return to the rest of the Israelites with a very positive report. In chapter 3, Joshua tells the priest to carry the Ark of the Covenant to the edge of the Jordan River. As the priest's feet touch the water's edge, God parts the water. All the Israelites cross over on dry ground. What a way to validate his leadership, just as Moses led them through the water on dry ground. Now Joshua is given that same miraculous validation. Joshua chapter 4, God tells Joshua to select 12 stones, one for each tribe, to set up as monuments on the other side. The purpose was to remind the people and future generations of the miracle that God performed in parting the water of the Jordan River. In chapter 5, the Canaanite leaders of the region nearby become afraid of the Israelites as a result of learning about the miraculous parting of the Jordan River. Then the next generation of Israelites is circumcised. The Israelites also observe the Passover, a remembrance of the miraculous deliverance from Egypt. God had commanded them to celebrate the Passover annually, Leviticus 23, verses 4 to 5. But this was only the second time they had done so since being delivered from slavery in Egypt. See Numbers chapter 9. For the only other occurrence, while they were camped at Mount Sinai, the Israelites get their first taste of the produce of the land of Canaan after 40 years of eating manna. In chapter 6, God tells Joshua that the Israelites' armed men are to march against the city of Jericho, once a day for 6 days, then 7 times on the 7th day. With the 7 priests blowing the trumpets' ram horns, and all the people are to shout. The Israelites do as God commands, and the city walls collapse. Now in chapter 7, in disobedience to Joshua's order, a man named Achan takes some silver and gold and a beautiful garment for himself from the spoils of Jericho. This amounts to stealing from God, in direct disobedience to Joshua's instructions. The Israelites attack the city of Ai, which appears to be an easy conquest. As a result of Achan's disobedience, however, God permits the army of Ai to defeat the Israelites. In chapter 8, the Israelites attack Ai again, and God gives them the victory. Joshua builds an altar and offers burnt offerings and fellowship offerings to the Lord. Half the Israelites stand near Mount Gerizim. The other half stand near Mount Ebal, with the Ark of the Covenant between them. Joshua reads God's law to the people, emphasizing the blessings that God had promised if they had obeyed him, and the curses that God had promised if they disobeyed him. Now in chapter 9, some inhabitants of Gibeon learned that the Israelites had conquered Jericho and Ai. Fearing they might be next, they deceived Joshua and the leaders of Israelites into making a treaty with them. When Joshua learns their deception, he keeps his promised not to destroy the Gibeonites, but he makes servants of them. In chapter 10, during a battle against armies of 5 other cities, God sends giant hailstones on the Israelites' enemies. More people die from the hailstones than were killed by the Israelites. During the course of the battle, Joshua asked God to cause the sun to stand still. God prolongs the duration of the sunlight and gives Israel the time they need to defeat the coalition of the 5 cities. In Joshua chapter 11, ultimately the Israelites conquer the whole land in a general sense, according to all that the Lord said unto Moses, Joshua 11, verse 23. In chapter 12, a list of 31 kings are defeated by Israel. In Joshua chapter 13, a description of regions that remain unconquered, pockets of territory located in various places in Canaan. Settling in Canaan, Joshua 13, verse 8 to chapter 24, verse 33, including the division of the land among the 12 tribes. Now in Joshua chapter 13, verses 8 to 33, the land east of the Jordan River is divided among 2.5 tribes, Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh, that wanted to settle there. See these tribes' request in Numbers chapter 32. These 2.5 tribes failed to completely drive out the former inhabitants of their land, Joshua 13, verse 13. It was the responsibility of each individual tribe to complete the conquest of the specific territory given to them and drive out all the foreign inhabitants of that territory. And Joshua chapter 14 and 17. Caleb, the only other man besides Joshua to survive the wilderness wandering and enter Canaan, reminds Joshua that the Lord had promised him the portion of land, Hebron. The 2 of them had explored together 45 years earlier. Now, as an older man, 80, he goes to grab that mountain, that place. Joshua chapter 18. The tabernacle is set up in the city of Shiloh for the first time it is set up in the promised land. Caleb had characteristics of a great servant. Joshua chapter 14. 5 times it is said he relied upon God's word. God promised it, he expected it, and he believed God. And secondly, he stood by his convictions. Chapter 14, verse 7 to 8. And thirdly, he wholly followed the Lord. Caleb said it, Joshua 14:8. Moses said it about Caleb, Joshua 14:9. Joshua said it about Caleb, Joshua 14, verse 4. People need to obey God from the heart. People should not be swayed by the pessimism of others. God is faithful to those that mix the word of God with faith. Is this not reading the word? It's standing on the word, believing God can do what he promised. We see the tabernacle had been set up to worship God. And that is what life is all about, walking with God. Now, settle in Canaan, Joshua chapter 13 to chapter 24. In chapter 20, 6 cities of refuge are established to which someone who killed a person unintentionally could flee and be safe from revenge while awaiting trial. In chapter 21, unlike the other tribes, the tribe of Levi was given no large region of their own. God declared that he himself would be their inheritance. In west it was Kadesh, Shechem, Hebron, in east Golan, Ramoth, Bezer. Now in Joshua chapter 22, the tribes of Reuben and Gad, along with half the tribe of Manasseh, crossed back over Jordan and settle on the east side of the river instead of in Canaan itself, and built a huge altar in that territory. A great misunderstanding occurs. The other tribes suspect the 2.5 tribes of idolatry and prepare to go to war against them. The 2.5 tribes explain that the altar is a memorial to remind them, instruct future generations what God has done for the Israelites. The explanation is accepted and a potential civil war is averted. Joshua chapter 23 to 24. As Joshua nears the end of his life, he first addresses the leaders of the Israelites and all of Israel. Joshua emphasizes the importance of choosing to serve the Lord rather than the false gods of the pagan people around them. The people respond to Joshua and declare that they will serve the Lord. Joshua dies at the age of 110. The Israelites served the Lord all the days of Joshua and all the days of the elders that outlived Joshua. Joshua chapter 24, verse 31. Here is the list of the cities that they fought against, beginning with Jericho, Ai, and ending in Hazor. Here's a chart where Joshua says, "Choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." Now here are interesting facts about Joshua. You may want to look at this chart from BibleCharts.org. Now we looked at creation: Adam, Eden, Cable, Noah, the flood, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, the Red Sea, Mount Sinai, the wilderness, and now the conquest of the land of promise. Here, once again, are 3 military campaigns. You can look at the chart. Your homework is to use your QR code. If you utilize your phone, you can find this. There are 2 additional ones if you've not yet looked at them. Amazing circular video of the Old Testament, and then the family tree from Adam to Jesus. Here's a list of all the homework assignments. nativemi.org. My name is Robert D. Corah. Thank you, Dr. Rich Costanza, for the Bible study. The survey of the Old Testament is provided by Native Ministries International. Robert D. Corah, the teacher, having gone to Moody Bible Institute, Trinity Bible College, graduating from Carson Newman College, and also a Master of Divinity degree from Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. Student notes, teacher notes, PowerPoints, videos, and other resources are provided along with homework. You can find them at Right Now Ministry. If you'll go to Native Ministries International, go to the Ministries section, select Right Now Ministry, you'll be able to find an invitation there for free. Native Ministries International, nativemi.org.